forms and also realize that we all have differing opinions. Lastly, it's essential to recognize the views and opinions expressed hereon are solely my own and do not necessarily represent those of my employer in any way. So now we've got that fun part out of the way. Let's have some fun with this. A little bit about me. My name's Jason Haas. I have over a decade of experience in business resilience, continuity, disaster recovery, IT, and just living life. My goal is to empower organizations to thrive during adversity, to embrace it. Very similar to many resilience or continuity professionals' path, it's nonlinear. My background's as a professional photographer. That's what I'm degreed in. That's what I did for a majority of my career. And now here I am as a business continuity, business resilience professional. My experience focuses typically with small businesses, public schools, public institutions, financial organizations, and other complex enterprises. Also, all of this AI work and conversations is done under the guise of Whirlybird Labs Limited. It's just not another consulting firm. This is where I put my education and training opportunities around AI is under this placeholder. That is not a rickroll of a QR code. Please feel free to click on it, or there's a URL at the bottom that you can travel to if you want to learn a little bit more about Whirlybird Labs. In the meantime, quick basic poll here using the emojis of Zoom. Feel free to pick one that fits. How would you rate your familiarity with AI? And while you're answering that, we'll just keep on moving forward. I always like to start my presentations with language and interpretation, because everyone defines these things a little bit differently. So you're going to see how I define business resilience. It's not necessarily a thing or a level of achievement or a state. To me, business resilience is a measure. It's dynamic by nature, a continuous process, it's quantifiable, it's all about the data. It's comparative. We usually use it to measure against other standards, and it's multi-dimensional. It's the most comprehensive view of an organization, typically, and it's actionable with insights. Again, it's all about the data. Your opinion may vary on what business resilience is, but when I'm talking about it, this is my lens and perspective. And then we have this thing called artificial intelligence. What? Generative AI, it transforms industries with novel content creation. Really big words there. So AI learns from the data to create new images, sound, voice, music, text, code, and so much more, where it can take a text-based prompt, like what you see on the screen here, and create other things from that. AI uses a foundation to respond to natural language requests without coding, and it can create code and other things from natural language, like we're having a conversation. It also has the potential to redefine industries and boost productivity, has the potential to replace jobs and disrupt other industries as well. It enables, or has the potential to enable, faster product development, better customer experience, and employee efficiency. It can also do the absolute opposite of that. Outputs can be inaccurate or biased, requiring human validation. You'll hear me kind of underscore that one quite a bit as we go through this journey of trust but verify. AI, it's a great tool, but it's also a bold-faced liar. So tread lightly. And we need to be realistic about the value you hope to achieve with generative AI. It is not going to solve all of our problems, and it might even create more of them. So it's a tread lightly, trust but verify approach. So what is AI's role in resilience? Well, for me, it's that assistant I've always wanted but could never gain budget for. It augments myself. So I think about all those things that kind of take away from the things that I love to do. So it's that affordable assistant. I can assign tasks to it and it can help me with those tasks, whether it's predictive analytics, again, feed it with data, summaries of transcriptions, probably one of my most favorite uses of AI. You know, who's not ever attended that forever meeting? And then you have like this multi-hour transcript you have to sift through, you know, create those executive summaries, high-level summaries, define the action items, assign it to people. It can be overwhelming and it can take a lot of time. But with AI, you can distill this pretty quick. And I'll have examples of this later on. It can also help you with scenario simulations and modeling, where you can take, recent event and news items and as well as information maybe about you or your organization, and create simulations of what would that impact look like on me, on my people, on my organization. There's also the ability to augment communications and response systems. Think of your mass messaging systems and pulse surveys. And what if, AI could help enable quicker responses where somebody needs help, where it can help geolocate them, or maybe it's delivering disaster recovery plans or incident response plans as part of a crisis management system. And it also can help with exercise development. And you'll see some opportunities on how I leverage it for there. From a personal standpoint, interview preparation, one of my favorite tools, and iterative business impact analysis. Now, I don't necessarily dive into that one because I put that on there to remind myself of AI has the potential to really aid in the BIA process.
Hmm.
Just, big surprise here. I'm not a fan of the BIA, though I get its importance. So I'm looking at how AI may help make a painful process less painful. When we think about enablement and deception with AI, some enablement is it can help with communications. It can help users craft messages with appropriate emotional tones for different audiences and contexts. The idea it can be write once, output many. Are you taking an executive summary or executive communication and need to distill it for your line leadership or a public communication? It can help with that. It can also help with accessibility and translation. One of the things I've been doing with artificial intelligence is I've been creating a generational slang translator. Both of my children are part of Gen Alpha, and half the time I struggle with what they say. So I've created AI and I've trained AI on generational slang so I can translate things from Gen Alpha to the greatest generation to Gen X to Gen Y, so on and so forth, and update it as new slang arises. So when my kids hit me up with like skibbity this or whatever it might be, I actually know what it means to my generation. It can help with content creation. In fact, you're going to see throughout this slideshow, like these two images you see on your screen, they're not real. I know, big surprise. Here we have an executive meeting with the lizard people, or my response to now President Trump when he was throwing shade at immigrants eating cats and whatnot. So we can do a lot of things with AI, both good and bad. We can also personalize it and kind of have it right in our tone, maybe respond in a certain tone, have it to get to know you so it can help you. It can also help with training and education, creating outlines, training programs, and all these other things. But on that flip side of the coin, it can create deep fakes. Again, it can add so much noise into so much content out there. Like as you see with the image here, those would be considered deep fakes. It can also emotionally manipulate people. You'll see that in text scams and things like that, where we can pull at people's heartstrings with AI once we get it to know a little bit about who our target is. It also can create to a lot of misinformation, identity theft, and erosion of trust. Again, AI can do both good things and bad things. It is neither. It's a tool. So it's really the intent of whoever uses it can use it for enablement or deception. We have choices. And now we get into the fun. This is the journey part of it that I absolutely love, to show you how I am leveraging it in my day-to-day, both professionally as well as personally. So one of the first things I thought about with AI is, what are some of those things that I don't really like to do that take away from the pleasure of my job? And part of that is summarizing transcriptions. Absolutely necessary, but for those forever meetings, it takes a little bit too. So with that being said, when you have that transcription that comes out of maybe a Microsoft Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting, if you're enabling transcription or you're taking handwritten notes and all those wonderful things, you can put that into AI. Keep in mind, there's risk in that. Have you talked about trade secrets and other, things, PII and other sensitivities, like IP addresses, server names, certain locations? You can scrub your transcripts to remove that. And that's usually what I do, is where I don't put my stakeholder's name in there, is I have a little side crib sheet saying stakeholder 1 is Jason, stakeholder 2 is Bob, stakeholder 3 is Lisa. And I may anonymize some locations and certain technologies we're talking about, because again, AI can be a threat vector. So we can take our transcript, we can put it into generative AI, and a lot through this presentation, I have a bias with AI. Claude by Anthropic is one of my favorite, and that's the little beige logo with AI, and there is Anthropic's logo for Claude. And I'll dive into why I love that one so much, but there's no wrong choice. Google Gemini works great. ChatGPT by OpenAI works great. If you like to be bold, there's DeepSeek out there, also works great, but you need to read those privacy policies and understand what's happening with your data. But it can distill data into essential components, focuses teams on critical information, enables anticipation of challenges and adaptation to change, and supports effective risk mitigation. So for me, the whole idea behind this, and this is where it gets bold. I'm going out to the internet here. Lord help me. So this is an output from, hopefully you can see it. If not, please speak up. It should be a web browser. Is what I've done when I had a transcript broken down to. And this was off a exercise that I did, and I was admitting it. So we have, and I flowed this into a different format. So I, like Legos, copy pasted, build a proper report, because AI, while it can do some of that, my organization has certain standards that my reports will be in. So it helped create the description of what that is and the results on the different scenarios that we discussed, the times that they started, how many employees received it, all these wonderful things that are part of the exercise. And it was able to break this down from a transcript, where then we talked about, scenario 2, what the situation was. And, spoiler, this is in a financial organization. So we're going to talk about ATMs, ITMs, and all those wonderful things that are part of a banking member experience. And then, what we talked about, what we focused on, and what that experience was. And it goes on and on. As well as then we have analysis and assigned action items, different outputs that we had from that tabletop exercise and what those stakeholders need to do. Then we ran a gap analysis on it, communication protocols. What did we do good? What didn't we do so good? And let's shine a light on those things that we didn't do so well, because those are our areas of improvement. So communication protocols, authority levels, documentation, system prioritization, stakeholder inclusion, thresholds for external communication, cross-departmental coordination. This may be familiar. You may have some of those struggles within your organization. And then developed a next step. And keep in mind, this is all coming from a transcript and a really good prompt. So there's a lot of different things that you can do from this. And my goal, and part of the reason why I wanted to use this in transcription, is the idea of striking while that iron's hot. When you get out of that tabletop exercise or that meeting, you might be invigorated and kind of excited to carry on that conversation. And getting those outputs from the meeting back into your stakeholders' hands as quickly as possible can really take advantage of that excitement and buy-in. So what used to take me maybe a couple of days before to break down a transcription, action items, and author that type of report, now takes me about an hour to 2 hours, and I can deliver that in the same day. So there's a lot of really neat things you can do with AI. And outside of transcription, we have these things of data analysis. AI loves to eat data for lunch. And my boss at the time gave me this wonderful or horrible task, depending on how you want to look at it, of take our 200 organizational policies, map those to FFIEC standards, ISO standards. Somebody has an open mic out there. If they could mute, that would be appreciated. And taking the ISO and NIST standards that we are governed by for my work, and then mapping those 200 organizational procedures to that. And the idea was initially to do it by hand. And that sounded sufferable, mind-numbing, not a great part of the job, and something, to be honest, that I really wasn't looking forward to. Now, it also presented a great opportunity. How can I use this tool called artificial intelligence to do this for me, but also be so smart enough about it not to create I call them resume generating events. If I ingested all of the 200 organizational policies into AI, that might violate some procedures and policies in my organization, and I could find myself unemployed. So how can I approach that by lowering my risk? Well, I went through and I used the titles of the policies. It gave an idea of like, hey, we have a workplace violence policy, a tuition reimbursement program, email signature guidelines, information security program policies. They're high level enough to not give away the keys to the kingdom, but they're also focused enough where we can probably find the chapters and subchapters to map these to for the organizational or for the different procedures. So I'm going to, again, keep going to the internet here. It's always risky in these things. And if that does decide to open, that would be great. If not, plan B. All right, moving that over because I have all of these. And one thing to keep in mind with these too is these are all part of the handouts and you will have access to them. Part of this. Of course, my link isn't working and my pivot strategy is not, of course. So let's see what I can do here. But anyways, that Google Sheet link does work here. We're just going to move on and it breaks it down. It shows pretty much this format that you see on screen here and the chapters and subchapters that it mapped out to ISO. ISO for my business continuity management, that's section 8.4 of ISO 22301 standard. Hopefully everyone has a copy of that standard. Or if I want to translate it into NIST 834, it's 2.2 and 3.4, or if I want to tie it back to the FFIE CIT handbook, which is my primary governance standard, there's all these different places where a BCMS can be talked about. You know, chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, pretty much the whole darn standard. So we can take that by engineering a prompt, load those standards and policies within reason. Again, know your risk, understand what is safe, what isn't, create a matrix with that, and then format that output into a deliverable for your leadership or whoever may have this. So I took, the titles of the policies that I had into a text file, and then I had PDFs of the others and put it into the LLM, the Claude in this particular one. And it took a while too, because it was so much data it had to sift through. Claude would get through about maybe half of it, and then I had to keep encouraging it. And I work with AI and prompting in a very conversational way, like, hey, buddy, I see you're having problems here. You stalled out. Could you please pick up right where you left off and continue on? And I had to do that about a dozen or so times so it could continue processing and then validate where it left off to where it picked up to make sure there was no gaps. But this took me about a week to figure out, where I figured it would have taken 6 months to do something similar by hand. So this was, to me, a very good use of the technology. All right. And going back into more of that data-driven dimensification, who here, is part of IT incidents and all those wonderful things? Well, we can take that incident data, again, know your risk. I'm just not saying, take those server names, IPs, DNS, whatever it is, and just dumping them into AI. You have to be really smart with this. But assuming, let's eliminate risk from the conversation for a brief moment, you can take that IT incident data, put it into an AI, and then maybe create a high-level executive summary. And you could tell that summary, please write it at a 5th grade level. Because again, you need to think about your audience here. And if we're delivering it everywhere from line and technical staff all the way up to executive staff and board level, they may have different understanding of certain concepts. So, if we can write at a common grade level, it might bridge those knowledge gaps. So I usually aim for between 6th to 8th grade writing comprehension. And that usually satisfies all of my audiences. So we're not talking big technical terms and we're not talking things that are such high level. And let's see. That link works. Hallelujah. And then we have here. So here's what I use to create this. So when I manage IT incidents, part of after we mop up the incident is I output as much as possible to static documentation like PDFs and Word documents. So they aren't changed. That's my single source of truth for that point in time. So I had all of our different incident alerts. I included rough drafts of event summaries, more issue alerts, a root cause analysis that we had. And then I floated in here to create an executive summary. Again, this one's written at a middle school level. That's what I'm finding in my organization that works well across all departments. And then I had it conduct a 5 whys root cause analysis. So this one's like, why did our users face connectivity errors or get logged out of core banking? Which, by the way, if you tip over core banking, that's really bad. That means no one has access to their money. ATMs might not work or you're in a higher risk. So why did core banking become unavailable? Well, the database binaries were removed. Say, what? Why were they removed? Because we had a bug in our PSU prep steps that caused this issue. And this is where I really loved AI, is I got to take that code from that maintenance script, put it into AI and say, hey, I'm not a coder, but could you tell me what's wrong with this? And I use that to help interface with my technical teams to see if we can keep each other honest, see who's telling the truth. So, okay, we put that script in, see where the issue was, and it's, hey, the grep command returned two values for prod one, and because of that, it did a recursive delete of the core banking database. Not good. And then, our impact assessment around that, who was impacted, what business units, what systems and processes were impacted, as well as recommended next steps, which is fix that maintenance script so we don't have to experience a DR event again. And then from there, so it created this rough framework of data that I could put in there, validate with technical stakeholders, validate with leadership, create a really nice polished report, and then distribute that within 24 hours after we mopped up the event. Kind of a nice thing to do where we brought it full circle, understood root cause, and it worked out really well. Not all incidents are that clear, though. A next thing that I absolutely love to do, and this is for a personal resilience standpoint, is Mr. Janko, you have a question?
Yes. Hi, Jason. Hey, thanks for doing the presentation. My question, I got pulled away for a second to something else and I'm back. Did you reference this, the process you have set up, the AI is internal in your organization so that none of this information you're sharing externally, right?
Right. And that's a great call out. And in my organization, we use the enterprise version of Copilot. In lieu of Copilot, if I were to take this outside for, like, example, creating things for a presentation like this, I do use other LLMs as well, other AI pieces, but I make sure I also anonymize my data so it's not pointing back to anything that my organization would find unpleasant or disclosing of trade secrets or internal processes or operations. But in our
Yep.
organization, we use the enterprise version of Copilot, which allows us to manage and sanitize that data and keep it safe. If you were to use a public version, like the public version of ChatGPT, $20 a month. Same with Claude, $20 a month. Gemini, I believe that's also the same, and as well as Copilot. When you're putting sensitive data or business data into a public model, you are taking risk on behalf of your organization, as well as potentially putting your own reputation and yourself at risk of job loss. So when you're doing these type of things, you need to understand your appetite for risk, and you need to be aware of what you're doing and aligning to your organizational policies. Great call out, Mr. Janko. I really appreciate that.
Yep. Thanks, Jason. I know our number one risk for all of us is to maintain that paycheck every week or two. So thanks for clarifying that.
It helps. The last thing I want is, being promoted to unemployed or a resume generated event or whatever it may be, and the reputational issues that come with that. But when we get into things like this next slide for job interview preparation, well, this is your own personal risk appetite. You can choose what to share and what not to share. You are the master of that domain. And a lot of times what I use for data that I'm putting into AI, whether it's an organizationally controlled AI or a public AI, is if it's been published on the internet or is on the internet, well, chances are it's safe to kind of lift and shift that into AI. And that's where I use job interview preparation. LinkedIn, other social media channels where you can grab the job description, LinkedIn profiles, your own LinkedIn profile, your own resume, maybe your hiring manager or the interview panel's LinkedIn profiles, and tie those together. Like, for example, this one I use Claude, and part of the reason why I keep going back to Claude, initially back in the day, which we're just talking months ago, you could associate documents really easy into this particular AI and then interact and engage with those documents. At that time, things like Gemini, ChatGPT, and other things didn't necessarily have the ease of integrating documents into it to engage with. So I really focused on Claude quite a bit because I could take PDFs and Word documents and copy and paste of text into it and create a structure, an umbrella project that I could then upload PDFs for, create a prompt, refine that prompt based on that initial output, going, I didn't really like what that is, and the next slide, you'll see what I'm talking about. And then you can also save that output, review it, refine it. You can add your voice to it. So a lot of times if I'm using AI to help me, well, prep for a job, when I'm actually interviewing for that job, I'll have some of those outputs out there. Like, how do I translate, my experience to international experience? Or how do I translate unregulated experience to a regulated environment experience and vice versa? And it can help you tell your story correctly to show that you do have experience when you may not have direct experience. It allows you to rehearse key points where you can have the AI take on the persona or personality of that interview panel based on their profiles. And it can question you so you can get maybe an idea of what questions might be asked. So you can practice that interview. You can also leverage notes and output for the interview too. Like I have those taped up on my screen where I have a list of questions to ask the interviewer, and I usually tailor it to the individual, if it's a panel, to each individual person on there to just make it a really more connected experience. And then from there, come on, slide deck. Here's where we get to have fun with this. So here's the prompt that I used for this. And again, keep going back to that internet. Don't fail me now. So here you'll see Claude. And here you'll see, and quick disclosure, this is for a job I didn't get. So you can choose whether this is valuable or not. I still use a similar process today for preparing for my next opportunity. But here I grabbed my resume, the mission values of the organization, which was DaVita Kidney Care. I even grabbed my LinkedIn because my resume and LinkedIn are a little bit different, as well as the job description for DaVita Kidney Care. And then I have this prompt here, which you'll see I'm very conversational in it. Hey, Claude, because I like to call them by their names, Claude, or hey, Copilot, or hey, chat. It's been a minute since I needed your help. Guess what? I need your help. Please analyze whether Jason Haas fits the director role at DaVita Kidney Care. What are his gaps in experience and knowledge? How can he talk through them and demonstrate value in those areas? So it's like my own gap analysis with a remediation strategy. The areas that Jason should highlight to demonstrate his competency are ISO, NIST, ITIL, and FFIEC, and other guiding standards. What questions should Jason ask of DaVita? Does this fit the mission and purpose of Jason's resume? Let me know. Thanks. You're the best. And then, boom, it gives me some output here. And again, it's a trust but verify. Just because it created output doesn't mean it's dogma or factually correct, or even maybe appropriate to use. So here it did analysis of my experience compared to the role for a director of business continuity in a healthcare industry. So, okay, we talk about my strengths with ISO experience. I have volunteerism with ISO 22301, 316, not 301, under a work group there. So, okay, great. We can talk about that. Program development. Well, okay, I've got a strong track record of usually organizations that I land at to do a program analysis and typically expand and tailor those plans to the needs and mission of the organization. And, okay, let's talk about crisis management because that's a key part of this. Well, here it's going to reference my experience with MIT of attending the class, as well as at that time I hadn't had the opportunity to guest lecture yet. But if I were to run this with a new resume, it would bring that in, as well as leadership capabilities. And now we get to talk about the not so fun things like gaps and how to address them. Like, I don't have healthcare industry experience beyond being a patient. Okay, so how do I address that and what are those talking points? Again, that for me was using a regulated environment to talk about a regulated environment. There's translation there. How to, the scale the organization. DaVita had been much larger than some of the other organizations I had worked at. So how do I talk about the experience I had with previous compared to what this potential opportunity is? Questions that I should ask of DaVita when comparing resume to job description to the mission statement of the organization, so on and so forth. So it kind of gives me a bit of a roadmap that I can consider or completely ignore. And depending, again, how you develop that prompt will help you get the type of output that you might be looking for. So again, all of these will be available as part of the slide deck and notes and whatnot. So feel free to use these. The links that go to Claude, unless you have access to your own Claude version, they won't work, but all the Google Docs are public. And then I had an epiphany not too long ago of going, there's got to be a better way to do this. And it hit me. And it's this thing called Notebook LM. It's by Google and it's free. So what does this do? Same idea, grab that job description, the organization docs, mission statement, DEI statement, culture, your resume, anything that you can find publicly. Um, Go into the Google Notebook LM, free, create a new notebook, associate these sources, web URLs, YouTubes, documents, all these wonderful things. And then you can create a briefing doc, a study guide, an FAQ, and then my favorite part is the AI podcast. And it has an interactive mode. And the AI podcast is two people, all AI generated, that talk about those organizational docs, the job description, your resume. So, and you can kind of guide that with a proper prompt of saying, I'm trying to prepare for interview at organization X. Can you really help me tie my experience to the mission statement and culture and DEI of the organization? And then you can go listen to it in a podcast form where you hear two people talk about you, your experience, and then potentially how to tie it back in as a story. And there's an interactive mode. You can talk with the AI and it responds back based on that natural language processing. And you can have a conversation in the ether going, oh, Jason, how do you translate not having international experience to an international organization? And then you can tell that AI your story. And then it can give you feedback based on that. Plus, the outputs, like the briefing doc, is kind of neat to have where you get those highlights on the mission statement, DEI culture, your resume, and tying those points together, a study guide, live and breathe what that organization does and their terms that they use so you can tie that into your conversation with them. Listening to that AI podcast, something I would do when I commute to work or when I'm on a walk, kind of baking it into me. So it becomes natural and conversational. And then, of course, participate with the AI podcast and hold yourself accountable. How do you tell your story and what is that feedback you get? And here you're going to see, what Notebook LM looks like. At this point, I've got things kind of scrambled a little bit because this is something I'm doing right now. So maybe in a future state, I can tell you whether this was a hot mess or very successful. I do feel personally that this helped develop my thought pattern and my storytelling to tie to the culture of this organization, which this particular organization lives and breathes its culture. So if I can tie my experience and talking points to that, maybe, just maybe, I can be a better candidate and maybe I can bubble up through the next round. But you can see on the left side, those are all the different things I aggregated in. With this particular organization, there were some YouTubes on there and how to prepare to interview for them. And I tied that in, and some things that I couldn't link in, I copy and pasted in. And then you can see on the far right side, gives me the study guide, a briefing doc, frequently asked questions, timelines. This is a research tool. And it can be used for more than just preparing for your next opportunity. Maybe it's a complex subject you're diving into work-wise or personally that you could use this. I also have a version of this on how to help me rebuild a 1GRFE Toyota V6 engine as I'm embracing that hot mess. And I'm coaching myself through it. So the next opportunity that we can potentially use for AI or for AI in what we do in our day is exercise development. And beyond interview preparation and other things like that, for me, the most important part is exercise development. To me, this is where the magic happens. Again, I look at publicly available information, things that won't create adversity in your job. So stakeholders, if you know who they are, go find their LinkedIn profiles, go find their Facebook profiles or anything that they're not that they don't lock down. Use those. Grab your company profile. It's posted on, chances are, on your company's website. Could be a mission statement, financial results, annual reports, governing standards, whatever information that might be on the organization's website. It's public, so you can leverage that. And then any governing standards. Does your organization align to, HIPAA, FFIEC, whatever it might be for that governing standard? Again, you'll see, I go back to Claude often. You could achieve this in Gemini or Chat GPT or other things like that, but I have a personal bias towards Claude, and where I can create that project, which is that umbrella, upload those PDFs, create a prompt of saying, in business Y, our biggest fear is ransomware. Help me prepare for that. Obviously you need to nuance a prompt more than that, but then you can take that output that AI gives you, review it, refine it, add injects, save those outputs by creating an exercise outline, a script, add additional injects, and enhance those outputs. So one of these will be, this is one that I have been working on, is a credit union ransomware response exercise. So this one, I told it needed to be 2 hours long and do a lot for 30 minutes for a postmortem, a high level review, and then we'll do a hot wash later. But in the meantime, it gives me my overview, my exercise structure with it breaking out in times, an introduction to the scenario. Okay, there we go. And then next slide, I'll show the video, which is my favorite part I get to do with AI. Initial questions for participants. So after they view the video, which is an introduction to the exercise, then I usually have a couple of questions like, hey, based on what you just saw, what's your initial thoughts or concerns? What do you think you should do? Your immediate actions. What additional information would you seek to understand? What do you need clarity so we make sure we understand the event or incident better? And how would you begin to coordinate your response? All these very high level things before we fully understand what we're experiencing. And then I get into the exercise, which this one we allotted 100 minutes for. And then I have different injects. As my stakeholders get comfortable, I like to try to tip them over with all these different things. Whether it's our InfoSec team escalating to a SEV2 type of alerts or a SEV3 or a SEV1, or now we have server impacts and, maybe challenges with containment and discussion points around that. Inject 3, well, let's tie it back to business continuity. This can't all just be a technical response. What's the fun in that? And let's tie it into communication. Okay, how do we communicate when we have potentially not complete information, and what are our priorities? And then let's talk about ransom demands and media inquiries, and then the regulatory aspects of reporting and recovery planning. And then if we're lucky, get into the debrief and the postmortem, talk about action items, post-exercise evaluation, create a questionnaire to circulate with those stakeholders afterwards to help me refine things better, and so on and so forth. It's really kind of cool, which then brings us into the next part, which this one I tested earlier. It didn't transfer over right, so we're going to go from the web browser. So bear with me for 2.5 minutes.
Welcome to the ransomware crisis
Hopefully you
tabletop
can hear
exercise. It's Monday at our credit union headquarters in Baltimore, Maryland. Our credit union serves over 250,000 members across Maryland, managing over $5 billion in assets through our digital platforms and 23 financial centers. As the clock strikes 9 a.m., our day is about to take an unexpected turn. Suddenly, our IT team discovers that all customer-facing systems are locked. A ransom message appears on every screen. The message is clear. Cybercriminals have encrypted our data and are demanding 800 Bitcoin, approximately $50 million, for its release. Even more alarming, the attackers claim to have exfiltrated 100 terabytes of sensitive member data. As news of the attack spreads, our employees are scrambling to understand the situation. Member calls are already starting to flood in. Members are expressing confusion and concern about their inability to access their bank accounts on social media. Local news stations have gotten wind of the story and are demanding comments. We need to notify regulators and law enforcement, but how much should we disclose and when? The attackers have given us a 72-hour deadline. The clock is ticking. In the next several hours, we'll be making critical decisions that will impact our members, employees, and the future of our credit union. Our responses must align with our credit union's core values of integrity, delivery, and creating positive experiences for our members. As the credit union's leadership team, you'll need to navigate this crisis, balancing transparency with security and swift action with careful deliberation. Key questions we'll tackle include, do we pay the ransom? How do we communicate with our members? How do we maintain trust and protect our reputation? How do we work with our technology and cybersecurity partner to resolve this crisis? Protecting our members, preserving our trust. Remember, every decision we make today will shape our credit union's future. Let's work together to navigate this crisis and emerge stronger. Maya Angelou said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." The exercise begins now.
So the whole goal of that is to create, oh, ah, is to create a sense of direness. And in attending other events and things like that, and looking to one of the people I look up to around exercise design is Regina Phelps. Is one of her goals was to evoke emotion out of her participants and stakeholders. And for me, that's what I use the idea of the video for, is to evoke that emotion, to put them in a mind state of crisis. Hopefully it's successful, not all the time, and then to use that tool then to talk about, under blue sky conditions, how we manage this gray or dark sky event. And there's companion slide deck that goes with this, as you see some of the imagery here, playing into the guise of the hooded, hacker and whatnot, and, just making it feel ominous. And what are those triggers and what are those initial questions as we step through that exercise? And you'll see, flip this over back to that screen real quick, is I use a tool called Pictory. And what Pictory does is takes a script, a text script, and creates narration using 11 Labs voiceovers, as well as licensed content from Associated Press and other image or video repositories to create these clips and assemble them together automatically to create this type of video. And there's a lot of different things you can do with it. Pictory is a really neat tool. And of course, we can't ignore, opportunities exist in the challenge. Safety third, so to speak. So the risk of it all. First, I always call out the competitive advantage. Those who effectively harness or at least understand AI will gain a significant advantage or edge over those who resist or fail to adopt. Think with all the other disruptive technologies that's come out over the years or decades, those who typically grasped onto them earlier found, more immediate success and long-term around that. So from an organizational perspective, understand the risk appetite of your organization. Don't do dumb things. Develop AI governance policy and advocate for responsible use across the organization. In my organization, we stood up an AI governance panel, and we talk about the opportunities and challenges of this technology and what we can and cannot use it for. And engage stakeholders to align practices with values and ethics. Just because you can do something in AI doesn't necessarily mean you should. But when we get from a personal level, well, you're the master of your own domain on that. You can assess your own personal risk appetite. You have to answer to yourself on what are you willing to disclose that hasn't already been disclosed. You can use this to help educate yourself, to explore AI, and to analyze potential use cases, which then you could bring back to your organization. So there's tons of information out there where you can create your own exercises outside of your organization. You can use it for interview preparation, image generation. You can use it as a creative tool. But we also need to address that AI hallucinates. This is where it can lie. And what is it and why should you care? Well, it is fabricated, made up information. It can be confident in that fabricated information and have real confidence in it, where it can almost argue with you. And sometimes it can be unpredictable. So why should you care? Well, it leads to misinformation. Noise versus signal could have reputational impacts for you and your organization, which can lead to trust and reliability challenges, legal and ethical implications. How to spot them? Well, there's a lot of different ways. One, it's inconsistencies. It's also, fact checking, logical inconsistencies besides generalized inconsistencies, irrelevance, where if it's a subject matter you're very in tune with, you'll be able to spot the irrelevance in it or the factual inaccuracies, lack of coherence, where you may engage with the AI to repeat that again, and each time you're getting maybe something different. Inability to provide sources for any AI that's connected to the internet or however it's trained. If it can't reference what that source is and then you go validate that source, well, something to consider. inconsistent style or tone, overconfidence and incorrect information, as well as use your gut feeling. If it doesn't feel good, look good, smell good, probably isn't good. And these are some of the things you can do with AI. I use it a lot in a creative stance. The slides in the upper left came out of my own issue where I didn't realize that AI spelled narrative wrong. In that upper left-hand slide, it's missing an I. I used this in a presentation, and I had a stakeholder where that was their only takeaway, is that I misspelled the word narrative and failed to hear the rest of the presentation around controlling the narrative. You can conflate things like Star Trek and Star Wars. You can have Socrates make things up. You can create dynamic scenes of war and death. Again, you can create wildfires, you can create action figures, you can create lots of things. You know, here we have Vladimir Putin and Mother Teresa. The prompt was to subvert election results. Or we can have Donald Trump and Kamala Harris sitting on the front lawn of the White House with the red Solo cup while Godzilla is being attacked behind the White House. You can do a lot of things with this. We can create lizard people, dynamic images, Lego people, all sorts of fun stuff that you can use to augment your presentations. And so how do we start our journey? By eating the elephant. It's a crawl, walk, run type of approach. So find those things that are low risk, whether it's personal or professional. Engage with your organization to understand what your boundaries are. And then as you build the confidence and understand those governing policies and what you can and can't do with AI, then maybe move into things that might be a little bit more risky, where hallucinations could increase, whether you're hitting it with a bunch of data or image creation or things like that. And during this whole journey of being transparent, it's going to do bad things. It's going to do great things. Let's celebrate all of those for what they are. So be transparent with your stakeholders, and that helps build trust in return. And then as part of the handouts and all, there's a ton of reading and resources, a bunch of links for international perspective, U.S. federal perspective, U.S. state, local perspective, as well as other readings and things like that for organizations, how they made news items for using AI or what they may do with AI. And what I used to develop this particular slide deck is kind of the tools that I have, whether it be Claude, Gemini, Copilot, Pictory, Flux, Minimax, ChatGPT or Sora, O365, Docs galore with Google, Snagit, Creative Suite, Notebook LLM. Again, these are all just tools to create this presentation. Fun fact is AI created 95% of the images in this deck, and it helped create summaries of the speaker notes via prompt engineering as well, so I could be a little bit more concise with how I present. And with that said, are there any questions? And also, thank you so much.
That was great, Jason. That was really great information. How long did it take you to become proficient enough? I mean, obviously you've kind of gone a lot further than we all want to be, but can see ourselves being able to be, I should say. But I mean, where you started feeling comfortable and really being able to do, some of this?
For me, it was all about finding, what am I trying to solve? Realizing that AI is simply just a tool. So what am I trying to solve with this tool? And for me, it was about allowing me to focus on the things that I enjoyed in my day-to-day work, which I didn't enjoy transcription summaries, writing incident reports and things like that. So working with my organization to gain buy-in, and so I could use it in certain productivity hacks to allow me to focus on the things that bring me joy, which is partnering with people, creating continuity plans, tabletop exercises. And so the long-winded answer to this took me about 3 months of just embracing it for what it is, breaking it. And this is as things were being newly released. ChatGPT was released, just think a little over a year ago. To the public, and these models since then have really grown. I am finding each day I wake up, something new is out there, whether it's video creation, voice cloning, maybe adversary AI models, DeepSeek, which is a Chinese AI model. They keep the data within China, things like that, but it can do some really neat things too. So it's one of those constant learning journeys. I equate it to painting a bridge. As soon as you're done, you start over.
Great. Anybody else have any questions?
Hi, Nancy. Yeah. Hi, Jason. This is Edwin Loaiza. Jason, what has been your experience with Llama 3.2 uh, client-based Llama 3.2? And also, when it comes to hallucinations, do you find that hallucinations are reduced when you feed it documents yourself? Because in a way, you're telling, hey, answer these questions, but based on these documents. So I'm wondering if you can perhaps tell us a little bit what your experience has been.
Right, sure. And as in for Llama, which is the standalone AI by Meta, which you can install that on your own servers, have full control over it, and dictate whether it can go to the internet or not. Um, I don't have direct experience with Llama. It is on my short list of things I need to get familiar with, but I have interfaced with others who use it in their profession. A news site called Ask News, their whole and it's about finding news aggregates and how it's all interconnected using the Llama model to do that. It's extremely powerful, very relevant, and the fact that you can install it on your own servers, own the data store, own the servers it's on, is very appealing, especially if you're dealing with highly sensitive information. We're using things from either Microsoft, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google may not be as appealing. As in for hallucinations, I have found the models have improved dramatically over the year where hallucinations happen a little bit less. But I find when I am really vague with how I prompt it, or if I hit it with a whole bunch of data, it has more opportunity to go off the rails, which then tells me as I'm hitting it with a vague prompt or using a lot of data to and do an analysis on, is I have to pay more attention to the output and pay attention to each line of the words it's putting out there and validate it. So it's something I have to be careful with when it comes for image generation or video generation. Prompting is really weird. You need to start speaking in the terms of those disciplines. So if I'm doing video generation, I have to be cinematic in how I describe things. If I'm doing still images, I have to, talk in a very photographic or an artistic way. If I'm trying to maybe replicate Da Vinci or Ansel Adams as a photographer and things like that. So I find the more descriptive I am with my prompts, the better outputs I get and have a less chance for hallucination. But if I overload it with too much data, it goes off the rails really quick. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Thanks. Nice work, Jason. Appreciate the update today.
Oh, thank you so much. And I would encourage any of you, reach out to me. I'm happy to show you the secret sauce, the stuff behind that dark curtain, and to share all this. I figure there are no secrets around this. The more that we can share with each other on this, the more that we can get different, unique perspectives and develop our thoughts around this as well as use cases. Again, AI is simply a tool. It's a hammer. And you can use a hammer as a hammer or, or something to open a beer can or a screwdriver. There's a lot of things you can use a hammer for, and AI is no different. It's simply a tool that can be used for the power of good or evil or whatever is in between. And what that looks like to you is up to you or your organization.
Awesome. That was great today. For everybody to just know that we have somebody lined up. We will be hearing more information for speaker for March. So hopefully this has been helpful. I know it's been hard for everybody to get necessarily out of their offices into meetings. So we're trying to adapt and change this year, and we're doing more online. Still going to try to do some in person, but I think this has been great. We've been getting good turnout. So appreciate everybody's support. If you have ideas, we're always open to ideas for speakers as well. Anybody else, Alice, or anybody have any last words before we?
Yeah, this is Suzanne, Jason. Just out of curiosity, I know that you use a lot of different tools. Of those tools, how many of those are free? I know Copilot. I know there's some free versions, and then there's, obviously if you're getting into the enterprise spectrum, how many of those tools do you use that you pay for?
I pay for a subscription to Anthropic Claude. That's $20 a month. That's out of my own, and all these expenses I'm talking about are out of my own pocket. I also pay for a professional subscription to OpenAI ChatGPT, which includes Sora, which is the video generator. That is also $20 a month. And I don't pay for Gemini, Google at this time, but I do use the free version. And all of these also have a free version, though you may be limited in how much you can engage with it or what type of data that you can upload to that. Pictory, that has a free trial, but that's probably my most expensive tool. That's about $400 a year. And Pictory is where I can take a script to create voice narration as well as licensed imagery from like Associated Press or other buckets that have those licensed creative content. I have subscribed to 11 Labs in the past. 11 Labs is that voice cloning, voice augmentation, where if you wanted to, you could clone, let's say, your CEO's voice and have them call people up and ask for gift cards. Great way to test things out. And then you could tie it with Sora to create an image of them, or if there's a still photo, you can animate the still photo and put their voice with it and do lip syncing. Some of those tools you're going to pay for. One of the tools that I pay for consistently, because I love it so much, is called FAL.ai. And that is the multimedia generator where I can create still images, I can create some videos, I can animate stills, and that is a credit base. So depending on the type of image or the duration of the video will tell me how much it costs. I think in 2024, I spent $50 on that particular tool. So my yearly spend right now for AI personally is around $1,000. From an organizational standpoint, that varies depending on the complexity of your organization. Keep in mind, Microsoft and all these other organizations have been pouring billions of dollars into AI, and they would love to see a return on that investment. So your enterprise licensing will vary.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there any sites that you would say to stay away from that either have more issues or aren't worth the money or?
The technology is moving so fast that what's great today or wasn't great today might be great tomorrow. The biggest one I have to say, tread lightly, especially if you're going from a business-owned network or computer, is DeepSeek. DeepSeek is the Chinese counterpart to OpenAI, Anthropic Claude, and it's a very interesting model. You can go ask it about Taiwan or the Tiananmen Square things, and it won't tell you about it. And all that data is stored on, adversary servers. You could also say that with OpenAI, Anthropic Claude, Google, you're storing data on somebody else's servers. So you have to, again, feel out what your own personal risk appetite is, as well as your organization's risk appetite. I would say for your organization, I would stay away from public models using your organization's information unless you sanitize it first. But again, my risk appetite might be different from yours as well as our organization's. So while I haven't run into bad tools, you just need to be very careful with what you're putting into these tools.
Great. Anybody else? We're at 3 o'clock, so don't want to be cognizant of everybody's time.
And again, if there's additional questions or inquiry, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, as well as you'll have my contact information and the handouts that follow this. I would love to assist you however it makes sense. Perfect.
Thank you so much. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. And we will see you in March. Take care. Oh, real quick, while I've got you all, the summit is going to be September 18th is what we're looking at right now. So mark that down on your calendars. More information to come. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye. Bye.